I have a problem with this ad placement. Daily motion. Let me adjust the volume so that y'all don't bleed here. Okay. You next to me, there's no darkness I can overcome. Technically, there's not much to talk about technically, but musically there is. I love you. You are my life. So generally the reference point in any music is going to be your bass drum or your snare drum. And we're getting a lot of really, really different and interesting rhythms. So the dup, dup, dup sounds like a triplet, or it's a 2, and then a offbeat third. Baby, I love you. You are my life. The L words that she has here are the operative words. I love you. You're my life. And so she's, first of all, it's really cool songwriting. Because that's not only lyrically significant, it's also alliteration. And then also it's landing perfectly with the drums. My happiest moments were incomplete if you weren't by my side. It's so hard. Like, the only thing she has to go off is this bass drum. And I mean, yeah, it helps she wrote the tune. But you don't generally see singers have this strong of an internal metronome. Happiest moments were incomplete if you weren't by my side. Try to tap your foot with the bass drum as you listen to this, and you'll appreciate how difficult it is to keep track of where you are. I won't go back all the way, but just tap your foot to this bass drum. I love you. You are my life. My happiest moments were. You'll notice that it's jumping on the offbeat, then it'll leave. Then it won't be there. So that's musically very, very interesting, especially because she's not hitting straight eighth notes. So she's not on the foot tap. With you next to me, there's no darkness I can overcome. It's so intricate in the first little bit. It's really cool. Love me. A lot of people find runs very, like, impressive. I've always been able to do them, and I actually don't think by themselves they're that impressive or interesting. What makes them compelling is when you can either add some interesting melodic harmonic stuff, or, and this is more common and easier to pull off, I think, is when you can emphasize the beats. So I think we're in 4/4. So the strong beats are 1 and 3. In hip hop, it would be 2 and 4. And in jazz, it would be 2 and 4. So where I'm getting at here is that these runs are not just a bunch of notes. The yeah, I think has an aspirate abrupt, which means the folds come together suddenly, which gives it nice rhythmic, like it gives it an attack. When you're evaluating a sound, you think of it as attack, sustain, decay. Yeah, so she's doing abrupts. We're bringing this out because it makes me happy on the inside. So, so that's an abrupt. When you have an abrupt, you can have this thing happen where the left side of the waveform is like flat. So you see how the left side of this is flat? This is an abrupt. This is when the folds come together. And so what she's doing is she's separating the folds and then bringing them together in order to make something rhythmically compelling. So if we're in 4/4, that's not that interesting, is it? It's like, is that on time? I don't know. We're kind of slowly getting into that versus this. That's That's way different. That's way different right here. That is so clearly a very abrupt start. And so that first part of that note that's flat on the left, that would be the attack. So when you want to put a rhythmic emphasis on a strong beat, that's what you do. Especially if it's only the vowels you're working with. These runs don't have consonants. Consonants would make it a lot easier, but all she has is vowels, so she has to do something to make it rhythmically interesting. That's the one. There's a ton in that one. Yeah, you can hear a lot of it there. But what's really cool is that she didn't do it back to back. She did it in the first run earlier, and then she's legato and really smooth in the phrasing. That's so cool. It's like she does this run to tie off the phrase, and it was elegant, and then she makes it like super rhythmic in the run, and it goes up. It's a really idiomatic choice for her. I don't see a lot of people, like whenever you do a run and you're tying off a phrase, you usually go down, and you don't apply a bunch of like strong rhythmic stuff to it, and it makes the song super hype. Every time it feels so good, it hurts sometimes. It's crazy how quick and easily she can bring these in. Time I see your face, my heart smiles every time. So every time she has an unvoiced consonant or an aspirate, so things that your folds don't come together for, and then as the aspirate is the H sound. Notice how it starts very airy, and then boom, the folds come together, and it sounds like what we saw when we had our science graph thing. Every time I see your face, my heart. It's particularly easy to hear on heart. I see your face, my heart. That's what I'm talking about. Pay attention and look for that as we watch, because she's throwing it in a lot in a very different context. This, if she were doing ooh, ooh, that wouldn't be interesting at all. But that's not what she's doing. You hear how the folds are like like they're making an attack there. So this isn't a run with a bunch of notes. This is a run with a very, very specific, it's a technique a lot of people have a hard time getting at first. And then you have to approach it differently, because if you're singing different pitches, you have to, adduct your folds on the pitch, which actually just means you're thinking about the pitch. The folds will adduct automatically, but they won't do this automatically. So it's not just a bunch of notes. That's what I mean by making it interesting. Musically, this is very interesting, and it's executed brilliantly using something that I don't hear often. Some people use it, but not to this degree. It's really cool. She did a good job of staying on pitch there. You can tell when she comes in. She's off by maybe a cent or two. A cent is 1/100th of a half step. But what's important is that she didn't have the accompaniment for all of that time. So that means that if any of the notes drag her down even a cent, she will enter flat. It starts that way, and then she fixes it really fast. And I can't even begin to tell you, it's not a musicianship issue. When someone goes flat, overwhelmingly, it's a technique issue. And so what we're hearing here is like basically close to perfect technique, so that she can get right on pitch when the music starts. She's not at all that flat, and she corrects it immediately. Like, she fixes that immediately, and it wasn't even that off. That's a mood. Holy crud. That's a lot of conviction. And then to bring yourself emotionally to that place, and then to like calm yourself so quickly. You need to be able to manage your breath and your mood and your body to make sure that you can be that hype and then calm down. So that is an aspirate gradual on He Loves Me. So she's been doing abrupts very frequently, as you know, we pointed out ad nauseum, because I'm a sucker for that stuff. So what is an aspirate gradual? It's basically the opposite of this, right? The left side of the waveform comes gradually instead of abruptly, right? So I love, that's an aspirate gradual. So she's been doing abrupts, and all this stuff, and then she goes to a gradual and does it really quickly. What's tough about a gradual is that so whenever you blow air through your folds, that's what brings them together. All right, so more science. Bernoulli effect. Hold on, let's switch to the bigger view so you can see the Bernoulli effect. Cool. The paper's coming together, that's the Bernoulli effect. By putting air out through the folds, the pressure outside becomes greater than the pressure through the little blowing thing, right? So that where you're blowing blows away pressure from the sides comes in to make up for that. Nature abhors a vacuum. So that's what brings the folds together. When you do an aspirate gradual, your breath needs to be so precise that you're basically doing this. They're separate, and then they slowly come together. So you need to gradually, really, really gradually increase your air. And so she does that, and it's awesome. This fluttery vibrato here is her trying to be so delicate. And she is. She's succeeding. But, like, I wish you could hear what this sounds like without a microphone. It's so intimate and delicate, the sound, and vulnerable. No one wants your garlic bread recipe. So it's not necessarily that she's doing aspirate graduals, but she's doing gradual onsets on different instances. So gradual, whether it's an aspirate or not, a gradual onset, the start of the note, is the same thing that we showed before, right? It's all gradual. So in order to pull this off, she needs not only light air, she needs incredibly consistent breath. So that's an extra difficulty. Singers think they know, like, and then it was like, oh, I can do the lip trill. What they don't realize is that if there's any difference in breath pressure, the lip trill will become more intense or less intense. So she's doing it very, very light, and then she's consistent throughout. And it's very, very difficult to do, especially after she was like just epic and everything was an abrupt onset and all that stuff. And she just switches at 180. This is really, really cool. So notice how it's before this. Listen to how soft these consonants are. One of them is not even there. Think. The K was almost not even there. The reason why this is significant is these consonants build up pressure. On voice consonants build up pressure. I think we already talked about it in this video. Right? So she hits the K gently, and then she hits the S, and then exhales. That's an air dump. She's using an exhale. And just to clarify, these runs require, just like everything else we're hearing right now, extremely little air. So if you punch your consonants, especially those that are unvoiced and build up, you're going to screw this up. So the air dump is really smart here. Oh man, that's dope. This is like, I don't want to sound too ignorant in saying it's like a Middle Eastern technique, because I actually don't know where in the East it would come from. But this technique is, so there's 3 ways to go up. As you ascend, you have to make adjustments. Usually, classical singers will tilt their thyroid cartilage. That stretches out the vocal folds because the thyroid cartilage has the folds inserted, as the insertions there. So you tilt your thyroid cartilage, thins out the fold. Alternatively, you can tilt your cricoid cartilage, which is at the base of your larynx, and that will fatten up your folds. The other way is to progressively raise your larynx and use less and less and less air. And that's the harder one. Young singers who don't know how to tilt generally just kind of reach up like that. And what they need to realize is that you need very little air to do this. But then something really cool happens. I'll point that out. That's super cool. So this is what this is. This is the contraction of the aryepiglottic sphincter. This is something that opera singers use to project over an orchestra, and it's not subtle, but it's really cool in the context because it's a higher larynx, lifted soft palate, no tilt, and very, very, very bright sound. When talking, you might recognize this sound. Oh, ma. We're talking about Fran Fine over here, right? That's how she gets that sound. Oh, Mr. Sheffield, right? That's the aryepiglottic sphincter contracting. The second one is opera, straight up opera. Oh, ma. Oh. That brightness in the 3 to 4 kHz range is the aryepiglottic sphincter. So why this matters is that the aryepiglottic sphincter exists above your vocal folds. As you contract it, you narrow the vocal tract at that point, which means you have to use even less air. So she has a raised larynx. She's not tilting to make her life any easier. In fact, she makes it more difficult and does this like aryepiglottic. It's like the gymnasticsness. That's a word. Ooh. So she does an aspirate gradual. And then she has a mix, which means some of the folds, so there's some connection in the folds, and then there's a little space there. That's a whole range of motion, right? So she has a little bit of disconnection on the folds. And the reason why this matters is that as she has that little space between her folds, and again, some of it's connected, she's going to tilt and then slowly bring the folds together. That's harder than you would think. Low notes love air. If you've ever been next to a subwoofer, the amount of air that it moves, you can physically feel it. Obviously, she's not a subwoofer and she's not that low, but the more breath you put in, generally the thicker your folds will be. Same like the Bernoulli effect, right? You push more air, they'll come together more. So, and you can get away with that in low notes. They love it. Low notes love air. Let's see. Right? I can just push and shove a lot of air. But what she's doing is really difficult, which is to phonate, which is to make noise, down that low and then have it be breathy is super, super delicate. And you require very thin folds to pull it off. And so it's very not what you'd expect or train often to do in your lower register. Listen very carefully for when she uses a gradual versus abrupt. Right, you hear that? That's so cool. Oh man. Remember when I was talking about like coming on, like if you're by yourself for that long, like you can't, like a guitar can't retune to you in the middle of a performance. A piano can certainly not retune to you in the middle of performance. So all of these crazy runs that she's been doing silently for what, like a minute or two, she's been perfectly on pitch, or she's been fed the pitch in her earpiece. Either way, it's amazing to me that she comes in right on the money. Furthermore, this steely sound here. That is a combination of a few things. So we get the gradual adduction of the folds. Then they're together right now. And she's tilting, and she's using aryepiglottic sphincter, and her soft palate is lifted. How do I know that? This is how male opera singers sing, right here. That's what I audition with. Like, and she doesn't bring it out all the time, but it's so cool. She'll do this. She'll go right into like breathy stuff. I need to go practice.